Welcome to the Profile Corner. Today's video is the second part of using dado stacks on a radial arm saw. I have two additional dado stacks to test out today. These just recently arrived. I have not opened the packages yet, so I'm not sure how good the quality is going to be. We have an Amana tool, Prestige 658060. It has a negative 10-degree hook angle, and it was selling on Amazon for $273, and it appears as though the price of that dado stack will be going up to $324 soon, if not already. I also have a Freud 8-inch super dado. It's the model SD508. It has a negative 12-degree hook angle, and is currently selling for $180. In the last video, I attempted to install a Freud SD608 dial width dado stack with a negative 12-degree hook angle, which is currently selling for $235. I had picked that up at an auction for about $35, and it was barely used. I couldn't get that dado stack to actually spin on the radial arm saw. It was hung up on the guard because of how wide the dado stack was. I may try to, in today's video, set that dado stack up so it's not trying to take a 3/4 inch wide cut, and then I may be able to get it to run on this radial arm saw. I also showed a Forrest DK08244 Dado King, which has a negative 5 hook angle on all the teeth, and I had bought that roughly in November of 2001. It's currently selling for somewhere around $365 to $394 on Amazon. I also showed a Woodpeckers Ultra Shear Ultimate 8-inch dado stack. It has a negative 5-degree hook angle on the outside blades, which have 24 teeth, and it has a positive 5-degree hook angle on the chippers, and the chippers have 12 teeth each, which are essentially the same number of teeth that you find on the cheaper dado stacks on the outside blades. Woodpeckers currently has it priced at $330, although they indicate on their website that it's marked down from $387, so the price could be going up soon to $387. So these are the different dado stacks we've got. In the last video, we attempted to reproduce this tenon that's on this board, which is 1.5 inches thick and 3 inches wide. We created a tenon that was 1/2 inch thick and about 2 inches wide, using 3 different dado stacks, including an old Craftsman 8-inch carbide tip dado stack. And we also cut a tenon in a red oak board, which measures 1 15/16 of an inch thick and 5 1/4 inches wide. We cut that down 3/4 of an inch deep using a 3/4 inch wide dado stack. These two dado stacks that I've got here today that are new, they have a negative hook angle that's even greater than the Forrest and the Woodpeckers blades. And so I'm interested to see if these blades are less aggressive. I did notice that the Dusty Lumber Co. YouTube channel has featured these dado stacks on its channel. I believe that that channel is partially sponsored by Freud, and so that's quite possibly why this super stack has appeared on there. And I saw this dado stack being used in one of his videos that he did for King Tool Company that's in Canada. So I thought that I would give these a shot and see if they're any better than the Forrest and the Woodpeckers blade in terms of being able to control the cut. So what I'll do first is I'll set up the saw here with the Woodpeckers 8-inch dado stack. And what I want to do is I want to reproduce this cut in the board, so I've got a good way of comparing how hard I had to fight the saw to keep it from auto-feeding or self-feeding when it was doing this cut. And then I can compare it with these two dado blades. In addition to making these two cuts, I also have a couple other samples. I've got a piece of black walnut here, which is about 7 1/4 inches wide. And what I figured I would do is I would put a 3/8 of an inch deep dado across, and then I can do that with all the different dado blades, and that way we can compare to see how much chip out we have in black walnut for all those different dado blades. In addition to that, I have something that Home Depot sells as sandy ply. It's a plywood that has kind of a white wood on top. It has very thin plies on the top surface and on the bottom surface. And then there's thicker plies made of some other wood in the center here. That other wood is typically quite soft. And so I thought it would be interesting to see what a 3/8 inch deep dado cut across this board would look like. And we could do that with all the different dado stacks. And then in addition to that, I have some 3/4 inch thick red oak plywood that I bought from Lowe's roughly 15 years ago. This has paper thin veneers. They're very thin, and as a matter of fact, here you can see that the veneer is probably less than 1/1000th of an inch thick in spots, because you can see right through it. And so it may be interesting to see what this plywood looks like with all the voids on the internals there, to see how it looks when it's cut with a 3/8 inch deep dado. And I'll do that with all the different blades also. So I'll get the saw set up with the new Woodpeckers blade, and then we'll get started. I have the Woodpeckers dado stack set up for a 3/4 inch wide cut. It'll be cutting 3/4 of an inch deep in this red oak that's about 5 1/4 inches wide. And so what I'll do is I'll make the cut, and then I'll measure the width of the dado that's made into the board to make sure that this dado stack is actually going to produce a 3/4 inch wide dado. I have not added any shims inside. When I'm pulling this out, what you want to watch for is kind of a jerking motion of this saw as I'm pulling it out. Every time you see that, that means that I'm holding it back from trying to self-feed. So keep an eye on that. After I make this cut, I'm going to put the Forrest blade onto this, set it up for a 3/4 inch wide stack without having any shims in it. And I want to see how wide that cuts, and I'll cut that on the reverse side. And then we'll switch over to using the new dado blades that just recently arrived. Another thing that I want to mention here is that in the last video I mentioned that you want your fence to be at least 2/3 as high as the board that you're cutting when you're doing dado cuts. And you notice here that my fence is not nearly that tall. If I had used that tall of a fence, I probably would have cut down on the amount of chip out that I was getting on the back side of the cut. So that could improve the cut quality a bit if you do have a higher fence. I'm not going to be adding in a higher fence because I want the cuts to be consistent across all the dado stacks. If you're having trouble controlling the radial arm saw when you're using a dado stack, what I'd recommend that you do is you either try to make the dado stack narrower and just make multiple passes with it, or you set it so that you're not cutting the full depth of cut on the first pass, and then you maybe make a second or even a third pass at the desired depth of cut. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll get started doing this cut, and then we'll switch over to the Forrest blade and repeat the cut. I have the Amana blade installed in the radial arm saw now. I've installed the 2 outside blades and also 4 chippers. Oddly, those chippers mention that they're 0.126 inch thick, which is 1/1000th of an inch, greater than an 1/8 inch. The set comes with a nice plastic case and also a set of metal shims that could be used to make the dado width wider. So I'm going to make this cut just as I did with the other dado sets in the last video. I'll cut both sides. Okay, so here's the quality of the cut. You can see that we've got quite a bit of chip out right there, and also on the back side here, there's quite a bit of chip out right there as well. I'm a little bit disappointed that we had so much chip out on the back side compared to the old Forrest blade and the Woodpeckers blade. And this blade is quite a bit wider than it should be for a 3/4 inch wide dado stack. The Amana blade seemed to measure a diameter of just under 8 inches, possibly by 1 to 2/1000ths, as I had to move the height of the saw. I now have the Freud Super Dado mounted into the radial arm saw, and oddly, even though on Amazon the product page shows that this set comes with a plastic case, it no longer comes with a plastic case, and Amazon's page did show that this product had a higher return rate in terms of products being returned to Amazon than typical, and that's possibly because it no longer comes with a plastic case. It did come with a set of metal shims, similar to what I had already been using with the Forrest Dado set. So let's go ahead and get started here. The Freud dado stack that I've got mounted in here right now, it seems to be very close to 8 inches in diameter, just like the Forrest and the Woodpeckers blade. This dado stack has the feed limiting steel pieces in front of the chipper teeth, so that may help us out here, but that also may mean that it's not compatible with the saw stop table saw, even though it has the correct diameter. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started cutting this board. So here's the cut quality. Got some chip out here on the back side. And again here on the back side. And maybe with a taller fence that's set up for zero clearance, that may have been avoided. Other than that, it looks pretty good. I have the Freud SD608 dial width dado stack mounted into the saw. I could not use the washer from the unisaw at the end of the arbor because the dado stack was too wide. I only have 3 chippers between the 2 outside blades because once again, when I tried to have 4 chippers in there, this blade would not turn and it stalled out the motor. And so I'll make the first cut here, and then I'll measure the width of the dado, and that'll tell me how wide of a dado I can cut with this particular blade on the saw. I also found that this dado stack is roughly 8 1/8 inches in diameter, and I also had to move this stop, whereas I didn't have to move that for the other dado blades. Yeah, I had less of a self-feeding problem with this particular dado stack, and I believe that that's purely due to the dado stack not being as wide as other dado stacks. Here you can see the quality of the cut up close. So the dial width dado stack from Freud did work, but you cannot use it at full width like you can the other dado stacks. They were set to cut the 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch tenon on the end of the Douglas fir board using the Freud SD608 dial width dado stack. We had quite a bit of chip out here on the inside, and also on the back side here there was quite a bit of chip out. The cut seems to be reasonably nice. It has pretty much a flat bottom. There's no problems with different size chippers, as I had read in some of the reviews for this product. So other than a little bit of excessive chip out, it's not so bad, and some of that may have been avoided by using a higher fence. I have the Freud SD508 set up to cut the 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch tenon in Douglas fir. Okay, the cut quality looks decent. A little bit of tear out there. The back side, just a little bit of tear out right here. There's actually some fibers completely removed. It looks decent other than that. It does appear to have a flat bottom. I have the Amana dado stack set up to cut the 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch tenon in Douglas fir. So here's the quality of the cut. There's quite a bit of chip out right here. There's actually wood missing right there. On the other side, it doesn't look like there's too much damage there. It was an easy cut. No real problems with it self-feeding in this wood. I have the Freud SD608 dial with dado mounted into the saw. I've got a 1/4 inch sheet of MDF on top of the radial arm saw's normal table, and that's so that I can get the bottom of the dado blade within 3/8 of an inch of the bottom of this board. So I've got the dado blade set so that it'll leave 3/8 of an inch at the bottom here, which means that this could be slightly under 3/8 of an inch cut. So I'm going to cross cut this oak plywood, and we'll see what the results are, and then we'll be able to compare it with the results of the other dado stacks. After I cut this board, I'll go on to cutting the sand apply plywood and also the black walnut. This has the advantage of cutting a little bit of a zero clearance into the fence. Looks like a pretty good quality cut. They cut the black walnut like butter. It did have a little bit of split out here on the back side, but other than that, it looks pretty good. I have the Freud SD508 mounted into the radial arm saw, and for some reason I'm having trouble getting down to 3/8 of an inch. I don't want to put too much pressure onto the elevation gear because it'll end up snapping those plastic gears or nylon gears that are underneath the table. So I've got it down as far as I can go with it, and we're ready to start cutting. I've got the oak plywood on the table. We'll start with that, and then we'll go to the sand plywood, and then the black walnut. The cut quality looks decent. Not seeing any problems there. Cut quality looks decent. Black walnut cut like butter. No issues with that. Good quality cut. I have the Amana dado stack set just over 3/8 of an inch off the surface of this 1/4 inch MDF. I couldn't get it quite down to 3/8 of an inch without risking putting too much force onto the plastic or nylon gears that raise and lower this saw relative to the table. Cut quality looks decent. A little bit of chip out, not too bad. Sand-day plywood. Cut quality looks decent. That cut like butter, had some chip out on the back side, and you may be able to get away from having that if we had a zero clearance fence set up for this dado blade. There is a little bit of chip out here on the edge. It's not too terribly bad, but it's not as clean of a cut as I would have expected from this expensive dado blade set. I have the Forrest Dado stack from November 2001 mounted onto the saw again. I'm going to start out with oak plywood. Cut quality is as good as you'd expect. Not seeing any real chip out here. Maybe just a little bit of fraying. So the sanded ply. That looks reasonably good. There is some chip out right here. Black walnut. The black walnut looks pretty good. There's a little bit of chip out right here and also down in here, but the cut quality is good other than that. I have the Woodpeckers dado stack mounted onto the saw, and we'll start out with oak plywood. looks good. Don't see any chip out here. Sandy ply. That looks good. It tried to self-feed. I should have tried to hold it back a little bit better than I did. But it looks good. Black walnut. That cut like butter, like expected. Cut quality looks very good in black walnut. I have the Craftsman 22-tooth dado stack mounted on here that I bought in the early 1990s. The blade that has two missing teeth are on the outside over here on the left, so that hopefully they will not damage the cut for these other blades, so that we can do a comparison later on. We'll start out with oak plywood. Okay, here you can see there's quite a bit of tear out, even on the side that doesn't have the missing teeth. It looks okay other than that. Of course, the bottom is not flat with this Craftsman blade. Okay, the sandy ply. Make quite a bit of chip out on the side that does not have the missing teeth. Black walnut. And once again, we've got quite a bit of chip out on the side without the missing teeth, and also chip out on the back side here. Okay, so I'll lay out these results on the table, and then we can scan the camera across all the results so that you can compare the quality of the cut with each dado blade. Results of the dado cuts laid out here on the table. And before we get into taking a closer look at the cutting results and being able to compare them, what I thought would be interesting is to look at the actual width of the dado cuts made by what was attempted to be a 3/4 inch wide dado cut. So with the Craftsman, we ended up with a 0.730 inch wide cut. With the Woodpeckers, we ended up with a 0.780 cut width. The Forrest, 0.749 width. Amana, 0.782. Freud SD 508, that came out at 0.760. And the Freud SD 608, that came out at 0.608, because I could not add in the last chipper, as it would cause the dado stack to bind within the saw. Okay, so now I'll take the camera and sweep it across all of the results so that hopefully you can compare the cut quality. The side facing the camera is the side that was against the fence. A zero clearance fence would have helped to control the chip out. The cuts on the end were done using a Forrest Chopmaster blade, so you can use that as a comparison in terms of cut quality. And the Freud SD508 unfortunately hit a void in the oak plywood, and so that's why it looks a little bit odd on the left side. Well, if I've learned one thing from all this experimentation, it's that a 1/4 inch doesn't mean a 1/4 inch to everybody, and that dado stacks are expensive purchases. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Bye.